Quilt people. Oh my God. I was editing a video from the other day, and like the studio is new to me, so I'm still figuring it out, right? And I have this like big light like right here over my work table, and as I was editing it, I was like, oh wow, like that is good lighting. Like I think I'm gonna do the rest of my videos from under here. But that's not the point of why we're doing this today. What we're doing today is very exciting. Triangles, right? Because I'm working on this quilt behind me, which I'm really excited about because it's a black on black, right? And so it's really subtle in its texture, but I'm really deliberate also in what fabrics I chose so that they would reflect black different and see the pattern clearly, even though it's still black on black, right? So I'm really leaning into the different types of fabrics that I'm using, which, funny enough, is not traditional quilting fabrics. This quilt I'm making behind me is currently, it's made out of corduroy, denim, and linen. I know, crazy, right? But I'm really pleased with the way that it's turned out. It's so subtle. It's so subtle, and I love it. It has just a little bit. Now, in the pattern itself is, polygons that are then surrounded by this other polygon or, hexagon. And it has a real weight to it that I'm loving. I'm making this quilt specifically for sale. Okay, so it's something I'm going to start doing. Super high-end quilts, really beautiful, some of the most beautiful fabrics that I've been able to find, some of which I've had in my stash for years, including this Japanese stripe that I'm using on this one. Let me just grab it for you and show it to you. It is, I have held on to this fabric for probably a decade because it's so beautiful and so fine. And so that's what I'm going to start doing is creating and selling works like this specifically for sale. This will be posted on my website for sale. I'm also going to start doing a Etsy store. This one will be available for $3,200. So if anybody is at all interested in this one, it's a really special piece. I love it a lot. Let me show you up close, but oh, there we go. So you can see how I deliberately put the lightest colors of the black all facing the same way, right? So being mindful of light source, right? Where's the light source in this image? Well, it's coming down from, down in this corner, shining up this way is the way that the image works, right? And again, it's very, very subtle, super sophisticated. It's going to be so gorgeous. And then I put that stripe on the stop border, right here. But then why we're doing this video today is that I'm going to be doing a main border in triangles. I know, shut up, right? So exciting. Triangles. Oh, they're so easy and they add so much to your work. Like you'll be amazed at what you can do. And so how this came about is that I was doing the cutting, right? And in order to do those, if you saw the previous video, right, I was making those little, little bits in order to make the block, but there's leftover from it to make little triangles, right? And so I'm actually using those triangles, the leftover, the waste, to create the border, which will be, right, black on black triangles. Ooh, look, that lighting is actually really working out for me right here. Right? And so I'm just taking all the waste, which was the triangles, and I'm sewing them all together. Great, great, great. This light is like, gothic. It's like, anyhow, so let's just do that. Like, let's just sew, like, these are my waist bits, right? All these triangles that I cut off in order to make the block. So now I'm just going through, right? And I'm sewing them one at a time, right? There's only a couple little rules. It's the easiest thing in the world is to sew a row of triangles, if you know what you're doing. So let's take a look at kind of some of the important things, right? To make note of when you're sewing triangles together. Okay, let's look at that. Here's my bucket of scraps that I put all the triangles in after I cut them, and now I kind of am just sorting them into the different kinds, right? These are the black linens, these are the corduroy, these are the others, and then the denim is over here, right? And so in order to like just start assembling them, right, let's just take one here and then a different one here, and you're just going to bloop, right, do this, knock them over face to face, right? So now they're face to face, and just line them up and sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance right down the side here. So let me pop it in the machine and do that. Okay. Run them in the machine, right? And then just like I showed you, we were gonna cut them face to face, right? So we just open them up, right? Easy enough. Just iron that open, right? Just like that, okay? So let me do that next. All right, so that's been ironed open. You end up with this, right? So that's, I mean, that couldn't be simpler, right? So then we just take this one, right? Because we're gonna be making a row, and then I'll choose my next fabric, which will be, I guess, this corduroy. And I'm just gonna put it next to the other one, right? So you can see how you just continue to kind of, you know, add one after another to create a row, right? And you're just gonna keep sewing them all the way down here, right? So we got our first two together. Now, this next part, right? You just go like this and line them up again. Now this is the important part. This is actually, you're gonna probably wanna cut that off, but it's important because if you cut that off, let me show you. If we cut that off, suddenly we wanna line up our fabrics here so they all run across the top, and then what's gonna happen? When you sew this on and open it up, this is going to be a 1/4 inch down below this line because you haven't taken into account the part that you just cut out, which is just important, right? So I often won't cut off that little bit, that little dog ear there, until afterwards so that I can line it up, right? You can see if that corner was still there, it would be lined up here, right? So you'd be lining these up here, right? Not here, right? It doesn't go straight across here. This one has to go on a 1/4 inch above this in order to create your seam allowance, right? So then when we take this and flip it over and line it up from there to there and add that on, I mean, it's so easy. You can just keep doing these really fast once you kind of get the hang of it and you understand the seam allowance part. And I know this is hard to see because it's black on black, but you just keep, you know, taking them along and keep adding them onto the strip. Now, I'm gonna probably, you know, strip piece these just so it goes a lot faster. And what does that mean? So basically, let me just run this through the machine real quick. Okay. The other thing you should note when you're sewing these together is that preferably when you're coming down here with your machine, right, you want to hit right here, right, at this little divot point where it's the furthest in, right? That's when you know it's going to be on. And so when I iron this open, right, it's going to give me that seam allowance down here, which is what I want, right? So that you have a 1/4 inch from the tip of the piecework to the edge. Right? And so you just keep going along and just keep adding them on. But for strip piecing, yeah. So what I did is I did 2 here, right? My first 2, and then I will, you know, do a bunch of 2s, right? So I'll just keep grabbing 2 different types of fabrics that I think go well together. And let me just separate these. All right? So that's it. I mean, it couldn't be easier than just sewing, right? Taking them like this, putting them face to face, and then sewing down here, so long as they're lined up pretty good. And all your triangles are the same size, same shape, kind of important. Don't mess that up. And so I'll just keep grabbing 2 like this and, you know, maybe do like 30 of them or so, and then get to adding the 3rd one on, and then the 4th one, and then you can grow it by adding the rows that you've already done, right? So that you're adding groups of 4 or 5 together, and suddenly you have a nice big long strip. All right. So then, after you keep adding, you know, little units together, before you know it, you got this, right? Again, the only tricky part about this whole thing is understanding that when you're adding a new one to the last one, that you don't add it with this top parallel with the top of the last one. It has to rise up above here by 1/4 inch in order to create your seam allowance, right? And you can even see how it lines up. Like, let's line all these up along this little line here, right? So if you went like this and kept adding them, it would keep stair-stepping down. But if you move this up by 1/4 inch so that the bottom now meets, right, then you'll be fine. But just be careful of that. That's the only mistake that most people make, is they keep adding it down here and then not up here where it needs its 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? So that you have it like that. All right, so let me add that one on. You can see it's up here, right? And then we'll just keep trucking along, making my borders for this awesome, awesome, awesome quilt. Haven't exactly determined the name of it yet, but I'm thinking obsidian net, I think would be cool. Something along those lines, right? I'm really into Kusama right now and her work and her nets and like her way that she's taken her personal trauma. It's an amazing story. If you have the opportunity, watch the documentary. I think it's on Netflix, Kusama, Kusama. This Japanese woman and her art is really interesting. Ooh, she is out there, I tell you. But see how that worked out? See? Because what happens is that little bit that you're not anticipating actually becomes this, and that's necessary up there. Okay? So don't forget about that guy, and so then you keep making a straight row. Okay? So that's how you make them. All right, so I'm just putting a bunch of 2s together, right, like this. Oh, look how fun that is, right? You could even make a little Halloween, like, party favor. How fun is that? So then I'm just, gonna clip them all apart, right? Because these are just 2s, right? These are just my 2 triangles put together, right? And so then I'm gonna go like this and just keep adding the 2s and 2s and 2s and 2s until you get a nice long strip, right? And then I'm gonna put them and use them on the border for this piece here. Anyways, that's about it, right? Super fun to make these triangles. And yeah, when you strip piece them, you can make these little party little favors. So that's really fun. Maybe I'll just make these. Sounds great. Screw everybody. I'll just be having a Halloween party in here in September. Because why not? I don't know. Anyways, that does it for me. Talk to you later. Bye.